again! I'm sure you've noticed the difference between the length of this video compared to every other video in the course. In this video, I'll be slowing things down to real-time painting, as well as walking you through the painting step by step in real time. Talking while painting is a pretty hard thing to do, like your brain can only do one thing at a time, so bear with me. Enjoy! Alright, I'm going to begin this painting the same way that I began the other portraits. We are going to be painting this reference photo, this woman facing the left. So we are going to begin with our loose outline. Kind of an oval in the general direction that she's facing. I'm going to draw some parallel lines to keep my direction and my proportions correct. Now, here's a note that I'd like to make about painting really people in general, but especially women. The shape of their hair adds to the general shape of their head in a way that if it's missing, if you don't consider the shape of the hair, the shape of the head might look off. So I've drawn a line where the brow line is, and then I've drawn a parallel line where the mouth is. I notice I'm making corrections as I go. Notice that the forehead actually needs to be a little larger. Let's see, we are going to work on some basic shapes, directions, giving myself direction. This is the part where we can be loose, because we will add detail. Once we add those details, it'll be annoying to start from scratch. So the ear line, because she's looking slightly up in this direction, her lips are faced up, her ear is set a little lower on her head. Usually the top of the ear is lined up with the eyes, but in this case it is a little bit lower, and that indicates that she is facing upwards. Now, before I get too bogged down into the detail of her face, we're going to paint in some values. We're going to block in those shaded areas of her face under the brow line. Right now I'm focusing on blocking in value. We're going to give her a defined cheekbone here. We're going to accentuate that shadow of her upper lip. There's a shadow below her lower lip. There is a shadow below her chin. All right, now we are going to quickly and loosely block in values. I'm going to create a darker value by mixing burnt sienna, sap green. I'm going to create a little bit of a brighter tone. I didn't use orange in this mixture on this palette, so I'm going to mix that kind of orange tone. Add a little bit more sap green. Let's see what that produces. I feel really good about this mixture. I'm going to clean up those values. There you go. There's a darker value. Now she has a shadow under her chin, but then she has reflected light between her chin, her jawline, and her neck. So I want to make sure to capture that, because that adds to the shape of her face. Add a little bit lighter, a little bit darker value there. Now I know her hair color is blonde, which is such a tricky color to paint. So we are going to mix some sap green, some burnt sienna. Yes, we use those same colors in painting the skin, but blonde is a really natural color. We're gonna add a little bit of yellow. This is cadmium yellow medium to create this brown. I know I have burnt umber on the palette, but this dirty brown, dirty blonde color is much more accurate than just straight burnt umber. To darken it, I'm gonna add sap green and dioxazine purple. Again, I'm not using black on this palette, so I'm gonna achieve the darker value by mixing the dioxazine purple in with the green. This achieves a much darker value that I'm much happier with. I continued that darker value onto the nape of the neck because in the reference photo that shadow is very harsh. So we definitely want to capture that. We're going to add some reflected light there in a little bit, but for now that adds a sharp contrast between the lighter value on the forehead. All right, add a little bit lighter value on the hair. Make it a little bit more straw colored with this burnt sienna and this cadmium yellow. Medium. Is it medium? Yeah. Still not the brightest value, but throw it in there. Some reflected light down here. I'm gonna add a little bit more green to that ponytail. And we will clean up this hair color later. All right, now we're gonna add a lighter value. Let's clean the brush. Let's add a much, much lighter value, like a very highlighted yellow. Add a little bit of red, make it warmer. Because we're blocking in, it's going to be loose. It may blend in, but we can make corrections later. Right now we are blocking in. You can see the contrast between the highlighted pieces of the hair and the shadows down here. She's got some hair tucked behind her ear. Give her this shape of her hair along her hairline. Let's darken that. That was the wrong color. Sap green, dioxazine purple, burnt sienna. Get that shadow mark there. There you go. All right, very happy with this. Darken that value once more. Now that the darkest value on the face has had a chance to dry, we're going to go back in and add a middle range value. When you're considering value, consider the scale from white to black, okay? The lighter values are going to be closer to white. The darker values are going to be closer to black, but instead we're going to use color. So I am going to, in order to kind of pick a middle range value, I'm going to use my pre-mixed skin tone mixture. This is not what I recommend the general skin tone to be, but it is a good middle range from which you can mix lighter colors, darker colors, lighter values, darker values, and any skin tone under the sun. Let's blend those a little bit so it's not such a harsh transition. There we go. All right, I feel really good about this. Now she has, this shadow continues, this darker value continues up her jawline. This is obviously the light source is hitting her face here. Let's give a dark value, dark shadow value in her ear because there is no light hitting in that ear. I'm still using a larger brush to prevent myself from getting too bogged down in the details. But I do want to establish where the light values meet the dark values on the ear. Here we go. Now, ears in general, ears, noses, cheeks, they're usually more pink, more orange, much brighter, more vibrant colors than other parts of the face. There's a lot of blood flow in those areas where there's a lot of cartilage, and the blood vessels are closer to the surface of the skin, so they tend to come across more pink or orange. So we're going to try to capture that. Now the goal, we're not really racing across against a clock right now. We are practicing simplifying our brush strokes. Okay, we are not spending hours and hours working on this portrait. We are trying to capture value in an efficient and quick manner. A little burnt sienna, warm that up. I'm trying to be careful not to mix this lighter value super dark, because I want there to be a distinct difference between this light value and that middle range value. Let's place, there you go. The light is very harsh on her forehead, so this line here will be from the lighter value to the darker value, or the middle range value will be very obvious. She's got a beautiful round forehead. There is a portion on the, let's see, there's a portion of her nose right below the brow line that is not going to be as bright as the rest of the nose. Now I'm going to make a note about the nose. Right now it appears that the nose is very aquiline, that the bridge of her nose is making the ridge seem like point down, very pointy, where in the reference photo her nose does turn up. The tip doesn't turn up, but this portion right here gives the effect that her nose is more upturned. So whenever we go into detail, I'm going to show you a trick to cleaning up your portrait. We're actually going to mix a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow. We're going to cool down this portion of the chin. In the reference photo, you can see a very clear shift in hue. Let's see what some blue and yellow does. That sap green's a little warm, so we need to cool it down with a true mixture of blue and yellow. Add a little bit of green here. Now on the reference photo, you have a harsh shadow on the shoulder. It's important to paint that, and don't just paint this shape right here, because if not, the eye won't know what to make of this shape. It'll feel like something is off, like the shoulder is in the wrong spot or something like that. So it's important that we connect that shadow with that highlight so the eye makes sense of it all. Let's accentuate that highlight a little bit more and make it that orange, sun-kissed color. And again, because we're painting it quickly and on paper, these colors are gonna tend to blend together a little bit. So these hues are gonna be much more on point on canvas. So for this reason, we're practicing on paper so that we can practice with a sense of non-commitment. You know, when you paint on canvas, when you're looking at a blank canvas, it can be very intimidating. So there's something about painting on paper that makes it feel like It's not a big deal if you mess up. It's not a big deal if it's not perfect. All right. I think it's time to block in. I think it's time to add more detail now. Now we're going to place that other eyebrow right here because we're going to clean up that ridge of that nose anyway. Now she's got big, beautiful eyes. So we're going to add a shadow here. As you see on the reference photo, her eyelid is more illuminated. So we're going to go in and fix that here in a minute. Clean that up a little bit. Now, like I said, her eyes are, everything is facing up a little bit, so we're going to reflect that angle when shaping her nose. Okay, I'm going to show you a trick for shaping up the outside of the nose in a minute. Her lips are slightly parted, so let's shape that up a little bit. So this area where that preliminary sketch is facing, is poking through, I'm going to show you how to clean that up in just a minute. We're going to connect the nose with the upper lip by adding this shadow here. Now this doesn't work every time, this trick. This only works if there's a very harsh shadow, which there is, due to the harsh lighting. Let's add a little bit of a more defined lip. There we go. Go back in with that very dark value, sap green, diaxazine purple. We're going to add eyelash. Now, you may want to bring that lash line all the way back, but it really ends around right here, so it's important to keep looking at your reference photo. Before we draw those lashes, we are going to take note of the cast shadow of those lashes on her cheek, like this, and then we are also going to recognize and include this bright highlight right here. Make that a little bit brighter. Let's go titanium white, mixture of yellow. Because we were focusing on practicing a faster painting, you know, obviously this painting could have more detail, but we've captured, let's go back over and clean up that value. We've captured the beautiful values found in the cheekbones and practiced painting in, blocking in value and then going in with detail. I think that's important that we were able to practice this on a profile facing model. So practice some more. I encourage you to take this opportunity to use a model in real life Get your friend, your mom, your significant other, get them to sit for you so you can practice a quick, timed portrait of them using what you learned today. There we go. All right. Now, let's go in with a couple special little elements. I'm gonna add some highlights to the hair. That's a little harsh. Let's tone that down with some sap green or burnt sienna. When you're painting a portrait, if you're painting it in acrylic, you'd probably already decided to paint the background, because acrylic paint dries really fast. So you can get in some fine details in the background before you paint the image on the foreground. With oil paint, it's a little bit more difficult to do so unless you paint in different multiple sittings. When you're painting with acrylics, in order to clean up these lines and have them blend so beautifully like oil paintings blend into their background, you can achieve the same effect by painting quickly, because your acrylic paint doesn't quite get to dry, and then going over the image in the foreground with that background color. And you can work your way back and forth over from the background and the foreground to get that beautiful blended appearance of oils. A lot of times, this is actually a trick of mine. A lot of times people can't tell, people who, have less or little experience with painting with oils, they can't tell if I'm painting with oils or acrylics because of the effect I'm able to achieve by blending the background into the foreground. And this is how you do it. I'm going to darken this value a little bit behind the nape of the neck. There it is. When painting a subject, when you're using this technique to clean up the subject here, it is a good idea to select, to paint a contrasting value, paint the background in a contrasting value to the foreground. What that means is, obviously the highlights are hitting her face on this direction and the shadows are hitting her, the back of her head and the back of her neck on this direction. So we're gonna paint lighter values on the background on this side of her head that will make her stand off the background. Okay, there's a little bit of shadow down here, so we're gonna keep that a little bit darker. Okay, then we are gonna create a mixture for the background, but we're gonna darken it a little bit so that that ridge of her nose stands off. Now, it's also our responsibility to, oh, this is the trick I wanted to show you. You can clean up the shape of her face with this background in this technique right here. So all of these lines are going to disappear. We can reshape the ridge of her nose like we talked about earlier. You can clean up all of these lines just by coming back in with this background color. Now the brush that I'm using is a larger brush. I'm not trying to get really detailed here, you guys. I am trying to keep it simple and fast. The goal is to show you that you can achieve a lifelike portrait in a few simple steps. Now, this may require you to go back over the painting and clean up the edges, go back and forth with this skin color here. But that's okay because you can build the shape of the face that you need. You can build that when you go back and forth. All right, now because the background is painted, I can see some issues in those values that I might want to clean up. We're going to go back over these darker values. There's a lot of back and forth. This is where it can get time consuming. So you have to decide what is done, what is perfect. Only you can decide that.
All right, that wraps up this portrait. I'm really happy with how it came out. I'm gonna paint one more portrait just to show you how I would paint a face at a slightly downward facing angle. We're gonna follow the same steps, we're gonna follow the same techniques, and I'm just gonna speed up this video and put it to a little bit of music. So enjoy. That wraps up the last video of Module 2. I hope that you learned a lot, and I hope you took advantage of the instruction and painted alongside with me. Next, we're going to go into a little deeper topic. We're going to talk about the emotions involved in being a portrait artist, and then we're going to talk about developing your own personal style. Let's get started.